The shocking truth behind the Good Samaritan's unforeseen dilemma. Few knew what truly happened that night on the winding road from Jerusalem to Jericho. It was a path cloaked in danger, shadowed by steep cliffs and treacherous bends. Travelers had to be wary. A whisper of danger lingered in the air, thick as the dust kicked up by hurried footsteps. A man, vulnerable and weary, was suddenly targeted. He fell victim to a gang of ruthless bandits. Their laughter echoed, chilling and malevolent, as they stripped him of everything he held dear. Blood stained the stones, glimmering darkly under the moonlight. The silence of the night screamed in horror, but it was not only the desperate plea for help that cracked the stillness. From afar, a priest approached. His heart beat in a rhythm of avoidance. Would he stop? Would he lend a hand? The man on the ground gasped, hope flickering, desperate in his eyes. But the priest walked on. His robes billowed, a contrasting white against the dusty earth, dashing any chance this poor soul had at redemption. The thrill of indecision hung in the air. Why did he turn away? They'd been taught mercy, right? Then came the Levite. Another chance for salvation. The man's heart raced. Yet again, the Levite moved past, a stone-cold expression plastered on his face. The thief of empathy had struck again. It was insane. How could this be? The tormented soul groaned, pleading, but his voice was lost amidst the troubling sounds of indifference. Could people really be so cold? Just then, a new traveler approached. A Samaritan. An outsider. The conflict was palpable. Would he too shun the injured man? Would prejudice win? The Samaritan halted. His eyes widened at the scene before him. Compassion surged through his being as he rushed forward. His hands trembled with fear, but his heart beat louder. Hope swelled like the tide within him. Was he about to rewrite the harsh laws of man, to dare to care? Tension crackled in the gathering dusk. The villagers who had watched the whole ordeal whispered to each other, brows furrowed in disbelief, and still disbelief swirled through the air like smoke. Hell regret it. Hell regret it. They thought. But in that moment, miracles don't come without costs. The Samaritan knelt, his presence a lighthouse in the darkness. Yet, looming dangers clawed in the shadows. What sacrifice awaited him in this act of kindness? Would he face those very same robbers? As he worked to tend the man's wounds, a feeling of dread settled over the scene. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows sympathetic yet sinister. The man's eyes fluttered open, light pushing against the dark, but would he find safety? Or would danger emerge from the lurking night once more? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As dawn began to break over the horizon, the early light of morning cast pale colors across the wounded man's face. The Samaritan worked feverishly, bandaging the gaping wounds, his hands steady yet shaking with the weight of the moment. He paused, looking around nervously, acutely aware that the threat of danger still lingered, although the world around him was awakening. The birds began their morning songs, yet the ominous silence of twilight still nipped at the edges of this new day, echoing the sudden cries for compassion heard just moments ago. In those fragile moments, while the bandit-ridden road lay cloaked in uncertainty, a question swirled deep within the Samaritan's heart: why had he chosen to stop? After all, he was an outcast in a land that deemed him less worthy. Was it mere pity that drove him, or was there something more profound, a stirring of divine purpose? The injured man looked up at him, confusion mingling with gratitude. He might have believed that he was on the precipice of death, yet here was a glimmer of life pulling him back from despair. What miracle sparked beneath the surface of compassion? Meanwhile, whispers floated through the ether, and the village dwellers, having risen with the first light, gathered, watching intently. Faces filled with scrutiny wrestled with judgment. "Why has he done this?" they murmured. "Can a Samaritan truly bring healing?" Their bewilderment reflected centuries-old divides. The air crackled with tension, heavy with the weight of their preconceived notions. The road might have been busy with travelers, yet here they were fixed in a moment, paralyzed by ignorance that loomed large. Chaotic whispers morphed into discomforting thoughts as the villagers debated amongst themselves. Would the Samaritan's act of kindness lead to his own demise? In this world, mercy was often entangled with risk, and the bandits could be lurking just beyond their view. What good could come from compassion in a place where hatred reigned? As if summoned by the very air of vulnerability, the answer came crashing in like a tempest. A shadow flitted across the path the bandits had returned. With hearts pounding, the villagers and the Samaritans' eyes locked in horror. The moment froze as if time luxuriated in the suffering it witnessed. The Samaritan grasped the bandaged man closer, unwilling to let go of the healing bond they had forged. Would he abandon his moment of humane bravery to escape unscathed? But then came another realization: this injury transcended the scope of mere skin, unfurling into something sacred. There was a spiritual kinship blooming in the midst of chaos. The Samaritan's heart raced not only with the threat of danger but with a flicker of understanding. Could grace bloom in desolation? If the wounded soul survived, could their shared humanity prevail over the judgment of men? As the sun climbed higher, the air thickened with anticipation. Faith fluctuated like the wind, uncertain yet fierce. Would the compassionate heart prevail, or would it crumble under the weight of prejudice and fear? The Samaritan took a deep breath, summoning courage from the depths of his newfound resolve. The tension teetered precariously in that fateful moment, as shadows coalesced into a figure on the horizon. Questions flooded in. When faced with choosing between self-preservation and the call of another's suffering, how far would one go? Is empathy a shield or a vulnerability that sees kindness through the storm? The air grew heavy with unspoken fears as the shadow solidified into a bandit, a figure cloaked in predatory intent. With each step, the intruder's demeanor radiated menace, and the world around seemed still, vibrating only with the pulse of incredible tension. The villagers, now spectators to a play unfolding before their eyes, found their breath caught in their throats. What destiny would they witness? The Samaritan's grip on the wounded man tightened. Despite the burgeoning danger, a sense of purpose enveloped him, molten with compassion. There was something inexplicably profound about the connection forged in that moment, an understanding that reached beyond societal divisions. Could he, a despised Samaritan, truly embody the essence of mercy, a trait often attributed only to those deemed righteous in the eyes of the law? The bandit, sensing the vulnerability exposed before him, cornered them with the practiced ease of those who thrived on power. "You think this is a time for charity?" he sneered, eyes glinting darkly. "You're not a healer here, you are potential prey." The villagers watched in a blend of horror and fascination. A murmur swept through them as they wrestled with the reflected values of their own hearts. Could they truly condemn this Samaritan who dared to defy their expectations? For a moment, the air vibrated with a shared realization: courage, molded within the heart of an outcast, had the power to challenge the frontiers of bitter resentment. "Why do you care for him?" the bandit spat, challenging the Samaritan's resolve. "Leave now, and maybe you will escape this folly." The Samaritan, feeling the weight of the adversities laid out before him, looked back at the wounded man whose life hung limply by a thread. In a world where mercy was often judged by the color of one's skin or the lineage from which they came, he found himself confronting a truth that resonated in the echo of his own heartbeat. "Because he is alive," he replied, his voice unwavering, "and we are all part of the same fabric of life." This admission seemed to rise from the depth of his soul, stripped of arrogance and focus. It was born of a spirit that recognized the divine essence in every human being. The weight of that truth radiated into the oppressive air, briefly halting the bandits' advance. But the question lingered: did such vulnerability grant strength or open a door for further violation? The bandit hesitated, absorbing the weight of the Samaritan's words, but ferocity glazed his eyes like venom. "Do you understand the price of your defiance?" he challenged, inching forward with a sneer. Lives are commodities here, not divine gifts. The Samaritan stood firm, an anchor in a tempest. He found himself reflecting on the legacy of compassion that reigned in his heart. What cost must I pay to heal what is broken? Is extending love truly an act of rebellion or salvation? With this thought coursing through him, he realized this was not simply a confrontation with a bandit, this was a moment that compelled him to contend with the incendiary truths that drew lines in the sand of the human experience. Each heartbeat throbbed with question after question. If love thrived in the face of hostility, would it not challenge the very constructs of division and enmity? But what would it require of him? Would he possess the courage to bear the brunt of scorn, even if it meant standing alone? As the bandit lunged forward, and time stretched into an agonizing eternity, the Samaritan braced himself, caught in the duality of faith and fear. In the midst of this dreadful conflict, a singular, unyielding truth emerged from him: love, unwavering and fierce, demanded everything, yet offered the richest reward of all: an opportunity to transform despair into hope. Would the echoes of his courage inspire others to see beyond the exterior of division, or would they plunge deeper into silence and prejudice? And in a moment where morality hung in the balance, would he stand firm upon the threshold of what it meant to be truly human? The bandit, fueled by anger and determined to instill fear, charged forward, an embodiment of chaos into the fragile moment that had emerged. The Samaritan, however, stood resolute, his mind racing with thoughts that pulled at the very fabric of his being. What path had led him to this scene of turmoil? The weight of this encounter unfolded like the rolling hills of his homeland, revealing the vast, interconnected landscape of life. With the bandit inches away, a deep breath settled in the Samaritan's chest, grounding him against the onslaught of violence. It was as if the pulse of the earth itself conspired to fortify his spirit. What if, he murmured, almost to himself, our values have been reversed? What if mercy, instead of power, should guide our actions? The thought hung in the air, distilling courage into his heart. The bandit halted mid-attack, clearly perturbed by the unexpected resolve that glimmered in the Samaritan's gaze. The tension merged with confusion as the crowd drew closer, captivated by this strange confrontation. They had anticipated either the Samaritan's floundering plea or his final surrender, yet, he stood unyielding, as though he'd touched an eternal truth: your words mean nothing. The bandit spat, his voice a harsh crescendo against the silence. You speak of connections and divine gifts, but out here, only the strongest survive. You wish to heal a broken man while ignoring the very real cost of compassion. What foolishness! In reply, the Samaritan took a small step forward, closing the gap and dimming the bandit's bravado. Compassion may appear as folly to you, yet can love's foolishness not overcome hatred's wrath? His words resonated with a power that only deep conviction could wield. In that moment, time fractured, and the villagers watched with bated breath. Each of them wrestled with their own inner demons, questioning whether they had ever dared to extend love beyond the label bestowed upon them by society. The Samaritan's stance challenged the definitions ingrained in their minds. Would mere property lines and blood feuds dictate their lives forever, or could the essence of their humanity interweave as threads in a tapestry more profound? The bandit felt the ground shift beneath him, his predatory role faltering. Fear swirled in the depths of his own heart, the vulnerability of the broken man reminding him of the fragility of his life. The gleam of the blade in his hands, once a symbol of his hardened power, now felt heavy, burdened with the implications of each life it had silenced. Why do you persist in this madness? You risk everything for a stranger. He barked, his initial bravado shaken. Because the stranger is a part of me, the Samaritan replied, finding clarity through the tumult. By saving him, I save something within myself: my capacity for love, my very soul unshackled from the shackles of hate. His voice was steady, echoing with an unshakable truth that seemed to ripple into the heart of the onlookers. All those present bore witness to a pivotal moment interlaced with choice. A battle was unfolding, not just between two men, but between fear and compassion, between a life ruled by avarice and one guided by a brighter, shared humanity. And as the villagers listened, an ember of hope flickered within them, daring to ignite a change. Yet, even in that moment of clarity, questions lingered unasked. Would they dare to leave behind the safety of indifference for the risk of vulnerability? Could the Samaritan's embodiment of love transcend the hatred that permeated their world? As the bandit's grip wavered, surrounded by the weight of an unseen choice, the Samaritan had offered more than a challenge. He had opened a window into what life could be if compassion took precedence over the chaos. But the resolution remained elusive, hanging like the stars that punctuated the dark sky, distant yet full of promise. Would one brave act of mercy ignite a flame that would transform a community? Or would darkness swallow it whole, returning to business as usual, forever dismissing the profound truth stood before them? The air was thick with anticipation, hearts racing in unison, as the bandit's eyes darted between his weapon and the resolute figure of the Samaritan. Silence enveloped the crowd, a cacophony of thoughts swirling amongst them, each one grappling with the taste of fear and the sweetness of hope. The village, a tangled blend of past grudges and budding compassion, felt poised on the brink of a decision that could change everything. Just beyond the tension was the moon, casting a gentle glow, illuminating not only the land but also the shadows that dwelled within the hearts of the onlookers. In this intensity, whispers of history unfolded, stories of people who had become enemies by mere circumstance, by badges of ancestry and territory. Would they shatter those shackles, or were they bound to repeat the mistakes of the past? As the Samaritan stood before the bandit, he felt a profound calm settle within him. It was a stillness mingled with a new understanding, a recognition that true strength did not lie in domination, but in the willingness to connect, to see the deep humanity in all, even one's opponent. In embracing another's pain, we find our redemption, he uttered softly, almost as if inviting the bandit to walk alongside him on this path of enlightenment. The bandit faltered, his fingers twitching on the hilt of his weapon. The insatiable anger that had propelled him forward began to ebb, replaced by a dawning realization. You speak of connections, yet my life has been forged in isolation. I have known only the language of violence, he whispered, his facade of bravado evaporating like mist before dawn. Can one moment of mercy truly alter the course of a life steeped in darkness? A ripple of understanding traveled through the crowd, awakening dormant connections. Lives intertwined not merely by geography but by shared struggles and yearning for something greater, a desire for compassion, perhaps. The memories of past wounds fed by prejudice began to feel heavier than their anger. In that atmosphere, he could almost sense the ancestors of both families watching, holding their breaths in anticipation, yet, fear remained a volatile undercurrent, threatening to rear its head. What if your mercy leads to my downfall? The bandit challenged. What if I falter in this moment, and my heart chokes at the mercy you offer? He wrestled with something deeper, a dread of his own vulnerability, which threatened to unravel the identity he had clung to for so long. The Samaritan responded, perhaps it is the descent into vulnerability that reveals the truth of our existence. In allowing ourselves to fall, we may unfurl towards a gentler light. Could we not inspire each other to become something more beautiful than we have known? And in this fraught moment, questions bloomed like wildflowers amidst a cracked pavement, each villager pondering their own role in the greater tapestry. Was it not easier to simply carry on, upholding the chains of enmity? Or could they let go, bolstered by this unfolding narrative, to seek a deeper connection with one another? A vague yet powerful silence stretched its hands, wrapping around the village. The thoughts churned, each villager wrestling with their own identities as part of a broken but whole continuum. What if mercy grew to be a chain unbinding each of them, instead of a weight pulling them down? What if the struggle before them was not just between the Samaritan and the bandit but a call for all to reckon with their own histories? As the bandit's blade quivered under the light of possibility, the scene hung suspended, teetering at the precipice of transformation. What would take root in the hearts of those who watched? Would they embrace this terrifying yet wondrous notion of compassion, or retreat back into familiar darkness? In that crucible of emotions, the elusive answer dangled tantalizingly close. Mercy was a bridge, but would they dare to cross it? Would this moment become a memory, a whisper lost in echoes, or a pivotal chapter rewritten in love? The crowd held its breath, awaiting the next unfolding. Truth. As the moonlight bathed the scene in an ethereal glow, the air trembled with unspoken possibilities. The eyes of the villagers became windows, revealing depths of fear, hope, and longing. The Samaritan, standing firm in the soft light, felt a pulse of energy rise from the ground beneath him, an unbroken current that seemed to connect each heart in the crowd. It was as if time itself paused, allowing the gravity of the moment to be felt all the more acutely. Suddenly, a murmur erupted amongst the onlookers, voices mixing in a crescendo of confusion and curiosity. "What does it mean to reach out to an enemy?" one elder among them questioned, a hand resting on a weathered cane. "Can mercy be a path to unseen strength, or a fool's errand?" His voice trembled, slipping through the layers of history and emotion that surrounded them. The Samaritan gathered his courage. "It is not the strength of arm or shield that defines us," he spoke, his words gentle yet firm. "It is our capacity to see beyond the chains that bind us, to recognize that even the hardest heart bears wounds unseen. In the act of showing mercy, we do not merely offer a lifeline, we forge a new path, allowing others to tread a way forward that was once thought impossible." With each word, a flicker of understanding began to kindle among the villagers. The childhood echoes of tales told by grandparents began to stir. Tales of enmity forged in fear, and of the rare moments when understanding breached the walls of aversion. It was especially poignant for the bandit, whose brow furrowed as he considered the pathway proposed by the Samaritan, a journey fraught with uncertainty yet dazzling in its promise. The atmosphere shifted, as if the world held its breath. The bandit, wrestling with the tumult within, took a shaky breath. "You ask me to let go of everything I know. My pain has shaped my very being. Can mercy truly alter the fabric of my soul?" His voice quivered, exposing a glimpse into his despair. In response, the Samaritan stepped closer, not out of fear, but with resolute compassion that originated from a wellspring of shared experience. "And what fabric would you choose if it were woven anew? One that celebrates your pain as part of the whole, transforming it into the strength of shared experience rather than isolation? Your life has been rooted in a narrow narrative of vengeance, yet within you lies the potential to write something far more beautiful." The crowd stirred, energy shifting towards contemplation. The village had long held on to deep-rooted grievances, each ancestor's voice echoing in the soil beneath their feet, reminding them of old rifts. Now, as illumination broke through the darkness, shadows danced along the edge of understanding. They pondered deeply, reflecting on their connections and what mercy could mean if wielded collectively rather than individually. Can we honor our pain, yet still choose to embrace each other? A woman stepped forward, her voice trembling yet resolute. For too long we have turned from one another. Is there a place for forgiveness when faced with generational scars? Can mercy sprout in the parched soil of our enmity? With her words, the night air filled with questions, a backdrop of uncertainty layered with sacred hope. Every villager nodded, their own histories intertwining with her offering. The thought rippled through them, would their faith in one another be strong enough to take that pivotal leap into mercy? The choice hung like fruit on a branch, ripening yet out of reach. As the bandit's grip loosened on his weapon, hesitation shimmered in his eyes while he gazed upon the faces before him. If I were to step forward and embrace this mercy, would the others follow? Or would my effort be but a single drop lost in an ocean of resentment? The tension grew heavier, hearts beat in synchronicity, anticipating an answer that pressed against the cusp of revelation. What lay ahead remained an uncharted territory of shared belief and uncertainties. Could they all traverse the fragile bridge of mercy, or would they retreat into the known shadows of fear and animosity? As the villagers stood, caught between histories and possibilities, one question circled through the stillness: was it too late to rewrite their story, or was it precisely the moment they had long awaited? Would this gathering of souls emerge triumphant, or would they be forever haunted by the roads not taken? As the night deepened, the air thick with anticipation, the Samaritan sensed within him an energy weaving through the collective consciousness of the villagers. The flickering torches cast elongated shadows that wavered, much like their hearts dancing between fear and courage. In this twilight realm of possibilities, hope was both a flicker and a flame, threatening to illuminate a path yet unseen. "Tell us, Samaritan," called out another elder, his voice heavy with a lifetime of skepticism. "If righteousness is at the heart of such mercy, then why do we feel exposed and naked in its light? Is it not easier to guard our hearts behind the walls of our loyalties?" The Samaritan met the elder's gaze, studying the lines etched upon his face and the quiet despair that lingered in his soulful eyes. Indeed, he replied thoughtfully, it is far easier to cling to our defenses, to knit our wound into a cloak that we wear proudly, warding off the world. Yet imagine, for a moment, what lay beyond those walls. He gestured to the looming shadows that seemed to crowd them, each carrying the weight of every offense, every slight the very fabric of their history. What if these very walls are not a fortress, but a prison? A cage tainted by the past. His voice softened, almost whispering, as he continued. What if in breaking that cage, we not only find freedom for ourselves but a bond of kinship with those we once deemed our enemies? The villagers shifted uneasily, sensing the enormity of his proposition. In the darkness, the bandit's heart beat loud in defiance of his own doubts. He turned and gazed at the villagers, faces lit by a flicker of understanding, a shared humanity that presented an unfathomable choice. Then show me the way, he implored, voice trembling. Lead me into this uncharted territory of trust. But, what if I reach out and find only rejection? What solace is there in risking the remnant of my brokenness? The Samaritan smiled gently. It is not in the promise of acceptance that we find our strength but in the courage to love even when faced with fear. Each act of mercy may begin as a leap into the unknown, bound to test our scars and nakedness, but what awaits is resurrection, both for the giver and the receiver. An elder's brow furrowed deeper. Resurrection, but at what cost? Is it worth celebrating when we risk dishonor, or worse, betrayal? A heavy silence settled upon the villagers. The questions echoed like ripples across a still pond, breaking the surface of their understanding. They were on the precipice of a massive change, yet the fear of loss felt like a stone tethered to their ankles. The night seemed to stretch around them, wrapped in mystery. Was it truly possible that the act of extending compassion could rewrite their narratives? To dismantle the grudges that had held them prisoner for generations? Would they emerge from this gathering renewed, transformed, or fragmented even further by their choices, drawing from a wellspring of emotion that threatened to overflow? The woman who had previously spoken raised her voice once more. But, if we take this leap and fall, how will we gather what pieces remain? Can we become whole again after plunging into this abyss of vulnerability? Is there grace enough in one another to mend what has been shattered? As the question lingered like the cool night breeze, the air surrounding them thickened with possibility and dread. With hearts laid bare, each villager stood poised on the brink of decision. Would they grasp the hands of their neighbors, fearful yet hopeful, or would they retreat into the history that bound them in silence? With unyielding resolve, they faced an impending choice, one that would demand both courage and faith. Yet amidst the tension, a deeper mystery began to unravel. Was it truly possible that in learning to forgive, each soul could find healing not just in a single heart but within the multitude? As they collectively ventured into the unknown, and as they stood, woven together yet still separate, another question wafted through the night air, ungraspable yet vital. If mercy was to be their guiding light, could it lead them beyond mere survival into the embrace of shared humanity, or would it serve only to expose their wounds further, leaving them to ponder a truth they were not yet prepared to face? As dawn approached, a thin veil of mist unfurled over the land, blurring the boundaries of their surroundings and bringing an air of quiet anticipation. The flickering torches dimmed as the first whispers of light wove through the trees, igniting the gentle glow of a new day. Each villager felt the tremor of uncertainty swell within their hearts, still caught in the tension of the night before. The Samaritan turned his attention to the horizon, aware that the journey they were contemplating would be fraught with trials as yet unknown. There exists a fearful beauty in vulnerability, he spoke, voice carrying like a songbird through the morning air. For it calls forth the courage slumbering inside each of you, urging forth the collective spirit that binds this community. The villagers exchanged cautious glances, their eyes flickering with conflicting emotions. Hope and fear entwined like tendrils of intertwined vines, growing thicker around their hearts. Would they yield to the call of compassion, or would they cling to the walls of mistrust that had fortified their lives for so long? One youth, emboldened by the clarion call of the Samaritan's words, stepped forward. If we are to break down these walls, what is to protect us from the pain that has brought us strife before? What guarantee do we have that the world outside our walls is any less perilous than the wounds we know? His voice trembled, a testament to the storm of feelings raging within him. In response, the Samaritan knelt low, eyes level with the young man's. "The world holds its own dangers, true," he said softly. "But what if the greater peril lies not in the unknown but in the unfaced shadows of our own hearts? For every wound we carry, there exists a balm within our shared humanity." The rising sun cast long shadows, illuminating the faces of the villagers as an array of emotions washed over them. Hope flickered in some eyes, while doubt wove tightly through the thoughts of others. A mother pressed her palms together, her fingers trembling. "What should we do, O Samaritan? In this journey of healing, we tread upon the delicate threads of relationships, risking unraveling all we hold dear." The Samaritan stood tall, casting his gaze over the gathered villagers. "The threads may fray and break, but what is woven anew has the power to create something far more vibrant and intricate. Compassion does not erase our struggles, it transforms them into strength. In honoring each other's stories, we find the grace to stitch together a future rich with understanding." A heavy silence settled once more, drawing the villagers into deep contemplation. Would they embrace this invitation to rewrite their stories? Or would they retreat into the shadows of their histories, bound by the very fear that chained them to their past? Each heart hung upon the brink of an uncharted journey. The paths diverged in the dawning light. Promise on one side, the familiar embrace of pain on the other. The Samaritan felt their inner conflicts thrumming through the air, charged with uncertainty and possibility. It was then that he felt the gentle tug of the Spirit whispering softly within, "Awaiting you beyond these fears," the Samaritan encouraged, "is perhaps the unveiling of a truth that binds us together more than we realize. What if within our wounds lies a map to understanding one another? Each scar, a testament to our struggles, could lead us towards a deeper connection, a shared purpose." As the villagers mulled his words, a glimmer of resolve sparked within the gathering, illuminating the shadows. It felt as if they hovered on the edge of revelation, teetering between breaking free and remaining ensnared. Yet one thought reverberated louder in the hearts of many, a question of profound weight: could they find the strength, amidst their fears, to extend the hands of mercy towards each other? Or would the wounds of old deny them the chance to embrace a new dawn? As they stood poised on the threshold of possibility, they were compelled to reflect: would the path of understanding and unity reveal the shocking truth they needed to heal, or would it drown them in the depths of uncertainty? As the sun crept higher, casting its golden light upon the village, the murmurs of uncertainty began to take form into questions that danced like leaves caught in a gentle breeze. The weight of the Samaritan's message lingered in the air like the scent of blooming flowers, both intoxicating and confusing. The villagers found themselves at a crossroads, each pondering the path that lay before them. A woman stepped forward, her hands clasped tightly over her heart. "If our wounds can lead us to understanding," she began, her voice wavering, "how are we to share our stories without allowing the past to seep into our hearts anew? Can we trust that the sharing will not expose us to greater harm?" The Samaritan regarded her with compassion, as if he could see the intricate tapestry of her experiences woven within the threads of her fears. "Weft and warp create the fabric of our lives," he replied, "but each piece must honor the integrity of the other. As you share, listen not just with your ears but with your spirit, for within the retelling lies a sacred opportunity to grow. Trust is a risk, but without it, how shall love flourish?" Encouraged by his words, a man with weathered hands raised his voice: "If love is our compass, what do we do when our hearts are poised to judge before we understand? How do we quell the instinct to guard ourselves against those we may wish to welcome?" The Samaritan smiled gently, knowing this moment was a pivotal juncture in their gathering. "Judgment is an ever-present shadow we must acknowledge, but remember, it is not the shadow that defines us, but the light within that beckons us to move forward. Each time you notice that judgment, see it as an invitation to lean into your own vulnerabilities first. By doing so, you will illuminate the fear that fuels your guardedness and find connection in your shared humanity." The youth from before, emboldened further, called out again, "But what if sharing our stories brings pain instead of healing? How can we brave the opening of old wounds?" The villagers nodded in agreement, their unease palpable as they faced the abyss of their own traumas. The Samaritan took a breath, understanding the gravity of their fears. "It is true that pain may emerge in the sharing. Like a river that flows with both gentle and turbulent waters, so too does healing involve discomfort. But consider this: when you unveil the wound, you also invite the air of compassion to touch it. Together, you can cultivate the space for each other's sufferings to breathe, allowing the healing balm of love to permeate. As each villager turned inward, they reflected on their own stories: the scars of betrayal, the echoes of unkind words, the silent battles fought in isolation. The questions multiplied like stars in an expansive sky: what might it mean to reveal these stories? Would they, in opening their hearts, find allies in their fellow villagers? Or would the act of recounting amplify their pain and deepen their solitude? Amidst this contemplation, a weathered elder began to speak, her voice filled with the timeless wisdom of experience. The fear of pain can be a cage, she cautioned, yet remember, every story shared carries the potential for something new to emerge. We must inch toward the light of understanding, together. Our collective strength may be the very shield we need against the storms of our past. Her words soothed the tension, and for a moment, the villagers found themselves connected not just by the weight of their fears, but by a flicker of possibility that shone through the cracks of their hearts. Tensions softened as they began to envision what this journey could mean for them, transforming isolation into kinship, wrestling with vulnerability in pursuit of the strength found in unity. Yet even as hope blossomed, doubt still lingered, a shadow lurking at the corners of their minds. A collective question emerged among them, silent yet palpable: if they chose to confront their individual pains together, what truth about themselves might emerge, and could they ever be prepared for the revelations that lay on the other side? Would the act of opening up unify them or break them apart? As the dawn broke, a gentle breeze kissed the village, whispering promises of renewal and resilience. The villagers, still standing on the threshold of a decision, began to sense the vital energy weaving among them, a current connecting their hearts and souls, a divine thread awaiting their brave hands to pull it forth. Silence reigned, pregnant and potent, as the Samaritan sensed the stirrings of awakening within their midst. He took a deep breath, stepping closer to the crowd, who now bore witness to something deeply transformative unfolding. They were not merely a gathering of individuals but a collective, poised to write a new narrative, a narrative birthed from compassion and dignity. Together, my friends, we stand on the boundary of the known and the unknown, he began, his voice steady, reverberating through the cool morning air. In opening our hearts, though it may require a fraught unraveling, may glimpse the truest core of ourselves and one another. It is within our shared revolutions of mercy that we discover the strength to overcome the walls of fear and resentment that have long imprisoned us. A wave of resolve rippled through the villagers, their eyes brightening with a newfound glimmer of trust as they contemplated their shared journey forward. The weighty histories that had clung to them began to lift, painted over with whispers of possibility. Allow your stories to dance together in this sacred space, the Samaritan urged. In unveiling our wounds not as sources of shame, but as the narratives that bind us, we shall find a wellspring of healing and understanding. The grace of our connection emerges in the beauty of vulnerability. It is love that fills the gaps forged by generational grudges. An elder, his voice trembling yet imbued with sincerity, stepped forward. What if we share and are met with harshness? What if our attempts to find kinship are thwarted by the shadows of the past? The Samaritan locked eyes with him, determination etching deeper lines on his brow. You must face this fear with an open heart, for even where the echoes of pain resound, therein lies the opportunity for renewal. Love has the power to transform and transcend. What may feel threatening can lead to a greater understanding and an immeasurable compassion. The villagers nodded, digesting the weight of his wisdom. Slowly, despite the frayed edges of old hurts, a singular truth began emerging among them. It was the recognition of their common humanity, of the intricate relationships they had forged in anguish as well as joy. The youth who had earlier braved the conversation spoke again, his voice steady. If we begin to share, will we not just expose our wounds but also begin to heal? I feel the tentacles of fear, but I sense within me a spark, a glimmering faith in the possibility of healing. The air thickened with the collective sigh of realization. Hope glimmered in their veins like sunlight piercing through clouds. They were at the precipice of a moment when their fears could transcend into something soulful and cleansing. Indeed, replied the Samaritan, emboldened by their willingness to engage. Within your stories bloom seeds of healing, yet these seeds require water. You must nurture them together, acknowledging that in vulnerability lies your shared strength. Each step you take into trust is a garment of mercy woven anew. The murmurs grew louder, fueled by the hum of shared decision. The bandit, still present and transformed by the exchange, stepped forward, courage swelling within. And what of me? Can I, who once brought pain, now reclaim my own narrative through this act of openness? Am I not forever marked by my choices? Yes, the Samaritan said, but it is in your willingness to break the cycle of pain that you begin to cultivate a new identity, a life defined not by your past but by your present choice. Redemption can rise like the sun, illuminating what was once concealed in shadow. Remember, dear friend, each of us is both sinner and saint in this intricate tapestry of life. As the first rays of sunlight cascaded into the clearing, illuminating the villagers like the embrace of a new dawn, an explosion of clarity erupted within their hearts. Tears pooled in the corners of eyes previously marked by distrust, now glistening with the possibility of profound healing. Let us speak, said one woman, her voice rising above the restrained murmurs. Let us share the unvarnished truths of our hearts. May we reveal our fingerprints left upon one another's souls. Today marks a rebirth, a chance to curate a legacy not bound by hatred but defined by love. In a moment charged with collective breath, the villagers began to step forward. One by one, they shared their stories, unearthing the buried fears that had weighed heavily upon them for far too long. As they spoke, laughter and tears intermingled, weaving together a fabric rich with understanding. The tendrils of division were gently unwinding, each shared story a stitch pulling at the seams of mistrust. With newfound courage and anticipation wrapped tightly around them, they embraced the pangs of vulnerability found in their connection, where every moment offered the promise of the unbreakable bonds that would change them forever. As the morning sun climbed to its peak, it bathed the villagers in warm, the sacred glow resonating with the promise of transformation and grace. The Samaritan stood amidst them, heart swelling with an understanding that transcended all divides, witnessing not just a story, but a divine revelation ignited by acts of profound compassion. In that sacred space, they had become more than spectators. They became participants not only in the sharing of stories but in forging an unyielding faith in the power of love. For in this revelation of hearts, they embraced the truth, that every act of vulnerability, every leap towards one another, was a step taken towards healing, a pilgrimage reminding them that mercy, while challenging, held the potential for renewal. And so, grazing near the edges of a new story, one could see the essence of a communal heartbeat forming, resilient, tender, and capable of weaving together a mess of human stories into a rich tapestry of life, where love triumphed over anguish and unity embraced diversity. In this delicate balance of share and care, they discovered that the chains of enmity could rust and fall away, revealing the luminous beauty of a shared journey, their lives, interconnected and vibrantly alive. In that moment, they knew love was not merely a destination but a journey woven through the fabric of healing, anchoring them to one another in a powerful, eternal embrace of grace, standing as witnesses to the unwavering truth that could light the paths for those who had yet to arrive.